people. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, what do you know? Miracles never cease. I'm going to hang up. Well, yeah, no, they are. They're on the screw. They're on the way. They bought us especially extended films. 2/4 of the time we didn't work. And when we did work, it was like a 2-second flight. So we watched it. Especially in sports. And tough. Sure.
Good morning. I'm Laura Hand. We are going to Belhurst Castle in Geneva, where Laurie Fine is about to hold a news conference announcing that she is suing ESPN and 2 workers there for libel. This all in connection with the Fine scandal. Let's go there live.
Aaron came here and began building this castle. Today, in that tradition, another strong New York woman, Laurie Fine, comes here and begins rebuilding her life. Indeed, we could not have had this press conference in Syracuse, given the widespread way in which my client has been pilloried in the press there. It would not have been fair to her, and this is a more comfortable and appropriate place, therefore. In a few moments, Laurie Fine will make a statement today about her lawsuit. And thereafter, I will take your questions. And so, without further ado, I introduce to you Laurie Fine.
Thank you. Thanks for coming, everyone. Today, through my attorneys, I have taken the first step towards restoring my good name. The lawsuit I file in federal court says it all. I have never engaged in and condoned despicable conduct falsely reported by ESPN, Mark Schwartz, and Artie Burko. Although these defendants have known me to be a decent and honorable woman, they have maliciously attacked me in order to attack my husband and to boost television ratings in the wake of the Penn State scandal. In pursuit of these objectives, ESPN, Schwartz, and Burko knowingly and maliciously published, treacherous lies of Bobby Davis. Through the steps I am now taking, I will try to establish both stability I've lost in my own life, as well as journalistic and credibility that ESPN has so easily abandoned during the indefensible coverage of Bobby's transparent transparently false story. I'm here today as a wife and a mother who has had to endure the trauma of being smeared in the public as a monster. My family and close friends have stood by me. They know that I am a kind and loving person, but my life has been destroyed through the defamation that I have suffered, and this will last a lifetime. I may never again be able to engage in the charity work that I love so much. I have lived in seclusion for the past 6 months and may never be viewed in my community with the respect that I have earned through the years of my dedication to the city of Syracuse. It is impossible for me to describe here today what ESPN has taken away from me and with Schwartz and Burko. They should apologize and retract these horrible lies reported about me. Only after these defendants have taken responsibility for their reprehensible actions, they should be held accountable, and then justice will be served. I direct now my questions to Laurie Fisher.
Thank you, Laurie. I'm here to answer your questions.
Bernie Fine support this lawsuit?
Laurie?
Bernie does support this lawsuit. He's behind me 100%.
When will it be filed?
The lawsuit will be filed. We are working with ESPN's counsel to determine service and process and those matters. And upon agreement, when we reach that agreement, we will file the lawsuit.
The defense to a defamation suit involves truth. The defense to a defamation suit involves truth. Are you willing to go on trial and have these kinds of allegations come out publicly in the trial?
Well, quite frankly, I think that the complaint says it all in that regard. A lawyer doesn't file a complaint if he's not willing to go to the distance.
What about the idea of truth?
Saying that Bernie
I'm sorry.
have a problem?
Forgive me?
What about the idea of truth to these allegations? If ESPN has to defend itself, they would have to try to prove what they reported was in fact true. That would require witnesses and various other people brought to the stand to substantiate what Bobby Davis was saying. Are you willing to take that chance?
The lawsuit amply details the false nature of the allegations against my client. So quite pointedly, I say to you, read the lawsuit and understand that no chances are being taken here.
How do you explain some of the things that Laurie said in that fake phone call? Like Bernie thinks above the law, Bernie needs help, and then not denying Bobby Davis's allegations that he was molested?
Well, first of all, we don't know what she did or did not deny from a few excerpted portions of a barely audible tape that have been taken out of context when there are 48 minutes of which most we haven't heard. But moreover, I would direct you to the allegations of the complaint, which are very specific, very precise as to what has been reported and how what has been reported has been false and defamatory.
Lawrence, how was the tape doctored, as the lawsuit says?
Well, I believe the lawsuit may or may not reference that ESPN has admittedly, quote, sweetened the audio, as they call it. That's certainly a doctoring of the tape in our view.
What does that mean, though, from your point of view, sweetening the audio?
Well, we'll need to find out from ESPN what that means. That's their term, I believe, that they've used is sweetened the audio. That, to me, means that they've doctored the audio.
Laurie, can you put into context those excerpts which the lawsuit says was taken out of context?
I think that that those excerpts that have been taken out of context are amply detailed in the complaint. It is a 40-plus page document, very detailed, in fact, excruciatingly so, and I refer you to it, and I encourage you to read it.
I have read it, but can you just explain now what you think or what you say she was saying?
Well, I don't think it serves anybody's purpose for me to read verbatim from the complaint today.
Specifically in the phone call, though, when she said he had no business doing what he did to you, and I think there may have been others. Can you specifically address what she was talking about?
The complaint adequately, very pointedly addresses precisely what was being talked about. And again, I would refer you to it.
You talk about in the complaint Fine wanting to help Davis and realizing that this was futile, that he was not able to be helped. Why then would Laurie Fine talk about specific sex acts in a conversation with Bobby Davis? And why would she say, I knew what was going on when he went down to the basement and told me to check on the son? Why did the phone call turn to that if it was really about trying to help Bobby?
I don't know that the premise of your question is correct. I don't know that anyone has spoken about specific sex acts whatsoever. And in fact, I think to the contrary, the complaint would refute the premise to your question.
Are you saying that when Laurie said something about grabbing you or blowing you, that it was not about sex?
I beg your pardon?
There's a quote in the transcript that has Laurie talking about grabbing you or blowing you. Be honest with me.
What you are now engaging in the same out of context, undertaking as ESPN has, and I would caution you against that.
Is there any context in which Laurie would, explain why she would have this conversation with Bobby Davis?
I ask you to read the complaint.
The DA said that he found Davis and Laurie credible, and that if it weren't for statute of limitations, he would have charged Bernie and possibly even Laurie. Can you respond to that?
Well, that statement is either biased or irresponsible at best. I don't know how anyone who has thoughtfully reviewed the record as it exists widespread in the public in this matter could reach that conclusion without bias or without thoughtlessness.
Laurie, you said that your reputation was ruined and that you also raised a family in the area. If at all, how has this affected your family, your children?
Well, my children have to live it every day. The press has made it an ongoing story from, my kids work in the public. I am not able to work. They work at a place where they are seen every day, and the negativity has hit them hard. Their children. I'm a grandmother. And unfortunately, my girls have been hard along with my son, who does not live here right now. But the girls have had a long last 6 months. It's been a long, tough road for them to bear on accusations which we are claiming are false.
What's it like to go out in public? Have you even...
Well, and the reason we're here today is because it is impossible for Laurie Fine to go out in public and feel comfortable and feel the same pride and dignity that she once felt in the Syracuse community.
That she had to go out of the Syracuse area just to go out to dinner, for instance? I mean, what's it like?
Well, just as she's had to go out of the Syracuse metropolitan area for this press conference, she has for virtually all other aspects of her life, including food shopping, for example. She can't even go to Wegmans.
How is your marriage? Is that going to survive this?
I think that Laurie has already spoken about the support that she's received from her husband, who even as early as this morning wished her good luck.
How has SU treated you and Bernie? Do you feel like you've been treated fairly?
Well, this lawsuit is not about Syracuse University, and they're not named in the lawsuit. And insofar as those matters concern Bernie Fine, I do not represent him, and we would refer any questions in that regard to him and his counsel.
Why isn't Bobby Davis named in this?
Why are you taking action against Bobby Davis? He's the one who made all these accusations.
If you read the complaint, you'll see that the Fines have always considered and treated Bobby Davis like a son. And I don't know of anyone who would be true to that feeling who would then sue someone that they feel is a family member. I mean, Bobby Davis is misguided, and it's misfortunate or unfortunate that he is involved in all of this. I think he's been misled probably by some people, and we don't wish him any ill will. As always, I think Laurie wishes that he would make something out of his life other than this scandal.
But the DA believes his story.
Well, I've already spoken to my view of that. I don't think that's a very thoughtful belief.
Where's Bernie been living the last 6 months?
The Fines have a residence in Florida, and they also have a residence in Syracuse. And it's my understanding that Mr. Fine has been in Florida as well as Syracuse during the past 6 months.
Are the Fines in any financial trouble?
I beg your pardon?
Are they in any financial trouble?
This is not a matter about financial trouble.
Laurie, you said your family and your friends, close friends, have stood by you. Have you maintained a relationship with the Bayhans?
I don't believe it would be appropriate to detail Laurie's personal life beyond that. I mean, after all, it's the lack of personal life, it's the personal life that's been stolen from her that brings us here today.
Laurie, how much did the decision that came out Friday influence when and if you would file this? Obviously a good deal of work went into this, but were you sitting waiting on the decision that came out on Friday?
Not at all. That matter is independent of this as we see it. The timing of this decision was determined long before that decision.
Did you try to negotiate a settlement with ESPN before you came to this?
As I said to you, we've had discussions with ESPN. We continue to extend to ESPN the opportunity to resolve this matter amiably, and we hope to work professionally with ESPN in going forward with this dispute.
Do you see any First Amendment protections for ESPN in this suit at all?
Absolutely not, and it is because their publications exceed the realm of their First Amendment rights that we filed this lawsuit.
In what way?
I'd refer you to the lawsuit.
What would you like to see happen to Mark Schwartz?
We'd like to see him apologize. I believe Ms. Fine has already said that. We'd like to see him retract his false statements. We'd like to see him be held accountable, punished even, and the complaint calls for punitive damages against him for his willful and wanton and reckless disregard for the reputation and the truth of Laurie Fine.
Do you view Laurie Fine as a public figure?
I do not view Laurie Fine as a public figure, and the lawsuit, if you read it, is crafted in a way that I believe nevertheless takes into consideration that others might disagree with me, and whether or not Laurie Fine is a public figure, her defamation action is meritorious in abundance, and we will prove as much if necessary.
The complaint questions the authenticity of the phone conversation, specifically whether that was even Laurie Fine talking. Do you think that was her on the phone, or are you just questioning the statements that were made?
I don't believe the complaint questions the authenticity of Ms. Fine's voice, and apparently after waiting 10 years to do so, ESPN did obtain some expertise to authenticate Ms. Laurie's voice. But the authenticity of the tape is questioned insofar as it is substantially inaudible for a large amount of it, and it has been spliced out of context and is really just a textbook example of defamation in the world of journalism.
Does the filing of it in federal court give you any advantage over the state court in any way? Does the law give you any advantage that wouldn't have in state court? We believe that federal jurisdiction exists in this matter because the defendants are from out of state and Ms. Fine is a New York resident, so you have diversity of jurisdiction and citizenship. And rather than file in state court and simply have ESPN remove the matter to federal court, we just put it where we believed it would wind up in the first place.
If the tape is substantially inaudible, then how can you claim it's ruined her reputation?
Well, because the parts that are inaudible have been selectively spliced and utilized in a defamatory way, defaming her by implication, defaming her per se. And again, I believe the complaint is quite specific about that.
What about the manner in which the tape was created? Do you have any question about how the Post Standard played a role in that?
Not about the Post Standard per se, although I would question the duplicity of someone, secretly recording somebody else, and I would question that person's motives and intent in doing so, and I believe our complaint does just that.
How often have Laurie and Bernie been together over the past?
I don't think that's really relevant to this matter.
What damages, if any, are you seeking?
We are seeking damages to be determined by a jury in this case. Obviously, Laurie Fine can no longer work in the community, so there's a substantial loss of income to her as a consequence. Likewise, to repair her reputation is an intangible amount that I won't pretend to put a value on. I'll let a jury decide what it's what it's worth to have your life ruined in the community that you lived and served so well for so many years. And then, of course, there is a claim for punitive damages to punish these defendants for really this reprehensible journalism.
What was the sticking point in the negotiations with ESPN? Was there one sticking point?
I won't discuss what would be privileged matters between counsel and privileged discussions between counsel.
How long have you
What's
been
your sense
speaking
of
to
the
the
chances of it going to a jury?
I beg your pardon?
What are your senses of whether it will go to a jury?
Well, apparently ESPN is proud of boasting that they've never settled a lawsuit of this nature. So we have every expectation that this case will go to a jury and that the result will be devastating on both ESPN and its parent corporation, Walt Disney.
Do you have an expert who can testify that the tape was doctored and how it was specifically doctored as you claim it was?
We will present expert testimony in that regard, yes.
How long have you been speaking with ESPN trying to negotiate this before?
And I want to be careful with answering questions where I think the language might be a little bit loose. I wouldn't call my conversations with counsel for ESPN negotiations. I would say that they were discussions about this lawsuit and about how to proceed.
How long have you been doing that?
Because I can't give you an exact figure, I'd rather not say.
This paperwork that you filed mentions that Laurie and Bobby Davis had a conversation about 10 years ago about allegations against Bernie, and they actually discussed the matter. Can you elaborate on that a little bit, and specifically how it relates to this?
I think the complaint elaborates on that more than a little bit, and so I'll allow the complaint to do a lot of elaborating on that question.
Did SU give Bernie a buyout?
I do not represent Bernie Fine, and I have not interviewed him or asked him questions about this matter.
The Post-Standard published stories in the same vein, and the Onondaga County District Attorney publicly made statements to the press and the broadcast media that he believed Bobby Davis' story. So wouldn't you say that they're culpable for defamation as well? Why aren't you suing them?
I disagree with your characterization of the Post-Standard's reporting as in the same vein as what ESPN and Mark Schwartz and Artie Burko did in this case. In fact, I don't think they're in the same vein whatsoever, even remotely. Having said that, again, I've already spoken to the district attorney's, I think, ill-informed opinion of this case. He's entitled to his opinion, however unconsidered it may be.
And that wasn't defamatory when he said he believed Bobby Davis?
I'm not going to speculate about the district attorney's, investigation of the matter or lack thereof, which I think is the problem here. And all I'll say is that we find the district attorney's opinions in this case to be irrelevant, immaterial, unsubstantiated, and foolish.
The complaint says that Mrs. Fine extended the phone conversation with Mr. Davis to help him as he was, I think, talking about the lies according to the complaint. How would that help him in that regard to extend those conversations, ask questions about the allegations that he was making?
Again, I think the complaint adequately speaks to the motivations for the conversations, the real context in which the conversations occurred, and the way in which the selective misuse of that audio tape just defamed my client horribly.
In the tape, Bobby Davis uses the word pedophile. He says, you know what was going on between us. Why don't we hear Laurie saying, Bobby, you're crazy. My husband would never do that. We've only tried to help you. I mean, if she really believed that they were all lies, why didn't she say so? Why didn't she say, Bobby, you're lying? Instead, she continues the conversation in the vein of a sexual nature.
Well, we're gonna get a full copy of that tape first. Before we start answering questions with that kind of precision. In other words, only ESPN, only the Post-Standard have heard all 48 minutes. I think what the rest of us have heard have been maybe 2, 3, 4 minutes of it. And until we hear all 48 minutes, I don't think that we can go beyond the allegations of the complaint right now.
Wouldn't you say that that would be a reasonable response from someone who now claims that she was just trying to help this young, troubled man who is making very serious criminal allegations against her husband?
I'm not sure how you put yourself in in Laurie Fine's head and tell her what her reasonable response should have been when no one knows the history here that extended over a decade, and you really have to have all of that background information, and you really need to do that sort of investigation if you're going to report this sort of these sort of stories by as ESPN reported. And so that's part of the problem here, is that ESPN was just reckless, and they deliberately disregarded what was truthfully before their eyes, and they acted with absolute malice. In fact, we have public comments quoted in the complaint which adequately demonstrate that Mark Schwartz acted with malice in this case.
Well, Laurie Fine is a mother. She has her children with her here today. A mother would look out for other people's children. She was looking out for Bobby Davis by allowing him to live in her home. She opened up her home and her family to this troubled young man.
You're buying into the junk journalism that ESPN has sold in this case, and we, of course, reject that completely categorically.
Can you tell us who's here with Laurie today?
She's here with her two daughters, and her daughter's fiance and her nephew, and we can provide you names and spellings and so forth later. Are there more questions? Well, I hope that you all read the complaint carefully and report about it accurately. Thank you.
And we are wrapping up now this news conference from Geneva's Belhurst Castle, most of it with attorney Lawrence Fisher, who is now representing Laurie Fine. They say they will file a federal lawsuit for libel against ESPN and two of its workers, reporter Mark Schwartz and producer Artie Burko, in connection with the charges made against Laurie Fine. Laurie Fine spoke for about a minute at the beginning of the news conference, saying that the situation for the past 6 months has been unbearable for her, that she has had to live in seclusion, that she probably will never be able to do the charity work in the community here that she loves so much. The lawyer saying that he thinks ESPN has been reckless and has acted with malice in presenting the story about Laurie Fine. Laurie Fine is asking not only for the lawsuit and damages, we assume that means money damages, but also that the people named apologize and retract their statements. They claim that the tape that is the center of this controversy, the tape that Laurie Fine allegedly made with one of the accusers in the Bernie Fine scandal, has been sweetened, although the lawyer would not go into specifics about what they meant on sweetening the tape. We will have a lot more for this on our news at noon, coming up in about a half an hour, and of course on our website at cnycentral.com.